is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 819. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how's your week been? What's going on?
Good. I just, drafted a mono blue artifact deck with 13 lands in it, so that was pretty fun.
You know, I was
cube action.
I went to play poker last night, and Adam, the classic, my buddy Adam, he hosts the game, and he wasn't playing at the moment, and he's over on his laptop, and I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm drafting cube. Oh, sweet, and he's been mainly playing on Arena lately. And Luis, he firmly lays the blame at your feet. He watches your videos, and he saw you draft some like cool artifact deck or whatever. And man, he's in way over his head with some of these decks, and it's totally your fault. It's really funny. He's like, "How do I win with this deck?" I'm like, "Whoa!" Well, Luis drafted this card. I'm like, "Yeah, he can." So anyway, you're doing God's work for the Vintage Cube on Magic Online, it seems.
I'm trying, though. I got a recent comment after I drafted this like blue-black mid-range deck that just looked okay or whatever, and I 3-0'd with it, and someone was like, LSV just forces artifacts decks and goes 1-2, but then drafts medium mid-range decks and just goes 3-0. So like maybe you should draft less artifacts and more mid-range. Yeah, maybe. But on the other hand,
or maybe you should, not Luis. Right? But So anyway, you rehooked Adam back in the Vintage Cube. Nice work on that. For the show this week, we've got two things to cover. We've got our preview cards from Spider-Man. So that's pretty cool. And then we're going to do our Q&A episode as well. So before we get into those, we want to say thank you to everybody who supports us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/limited resources if you're interested in that. We also want to say thank you to Ultimate Guard for their support of the show. They make card protection products, right? Things like sleeves to protect individual cards, deck boxes to protect an entire deck, and even binders and things like that to protect your whole collection. If you need the good stuff, right? If you want to get that premium product, the great feel, the well thought out design, the really cool designs visually as well, Ultimate Guard is where you want to go. You can check out their full line of products at ultimateguard.com, and you can buy their stuff at your favorite online retailer or favorite local game store. Thank you, Ultimate Guard. We do appreciate it. We are not going to do a Patreon question of the week because all of our questions come from patrons this week. And we're not going to do a Crack-A-Pack because we want to answer as many questions as possible. But we are going to go over our preview cards. Luis, we got 5 preview cards from the upcoming Spider-Man set. And I got to say, Luis, I think they just kind of got me on the, I felt like I might have been in the grumpy demographic about Universes Beyond before I played with them, a little bit like, oh, this makes me nervous. Are they going to leave behind all of the cool places that we've been? It has a little bit of a sellout vibe to it, right? There's just some things that made me uncomfortable. But the Lord of the Rings set, that was kind of the baby, the shallow end of the pool for that. It was like, okay, that's not bad, but it was so closely related to Magic that it didn't really feel like a big departure. And then, when Final Fantasy came out, me not being a huge Final Fantasy player, I was skeptical, but felt totally fine, and the set was awesome. So I was like, yeah, this is great. And I do like Spider-Man. I used to collect comic books when I was a kid. And, so I'm like more familiar with this. And I got to say, even just looking at our preview cards here, I'm just like, yeah, this is cool. Like, I think I'm a convert on Universes Beyond. I think that, just trusting them to do it correctly is the right play. And so far, this just looks awesome to me.
Yeah, I mean, I've liked the good Universes Beyond sets, and like Lord of the Rings, Final Fantasy. Spider-Man seems like it'll fit in pretty nicely. I don't have a huge problem with it. They've at least kept the really wacky stuff like SpongeBob to Secret Lairs, and that ship has kind of sailed. Like, I still think a lot of those weird Magic cards just kind of look like crap, and I'd rather not see them. But if people really like them and want to play them, it also doesn't really bother me that much.
Yeah, the fact that they exist.
It's fine. It's not like I'm not like a Magic purist. I really am not.
Right.
So I think that if they do a good job with Universes Beyond, then I think that it's shown to me that it's got a lot of cool stuff going there. If so some of them are going to be better or worse than others, but for example, I've enjoyed all the Universes Beyond set a lot more than, like, say, Edge of Eternities, and that has something to do with gameplay, not as much to do with flavor, because I actually did like the Edge of Eternities flavor, but it shows that the game, first of all, the gameplay matters most, and second, they really haven't missed on the flavor on the big Universes Beyond sets. They've done, I think, a good job picking those. Will that always be the case? Probably not. Could we end up somewhere like, when you if you have a Transformers Universes Beyond set, that's probably going to feel a lot, more sellout, or sellout-y. But yeah, so far so good, I guess.
Yeah.
I was never that down on them either. I was never like, oh man, these are going to suck. So
yeah, I never was either. I just was skeptical. I was just like, I'm a little worried about it. Yeah, but I'm much less so now. So let's take a look at our cards here. Our first one is called Common Crook. This is 1 and a black for a 2/2 human rogue villain. This is a common, and when it dies, you get a treasure token.
It's just the rat from Final Fantasy that we just saw.
It's the same card. This is a much better fit though, because this thing actually has something to carry to drop after you kill it. But
flavor wise is actually better. Yeah. This card's gonna play fine.
Yeah,
these always
pretty good. Next is Rhino's Rampage. This costs 1 mana. You can either pay red or green for it. It's a sorcery. It's uncommon. It says target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It fights target creature an opponent controls. When excess damage is dealt to the creature an opponent controls this way, destroy up to 1 target non-creature artifact with mana value 3 or less.
This is like designer gore, honestly. Like the design of this card is just like, so 1 mana hybrid, target creature you control gets +1/+0 and fight. Sure, that's fine. It also even makes sense as red or green to whatever degree. But it blows something up. But check out how many conditions. When XX damage is dealt, destroy a non-creature artifact with mana value 3 or less. It's like hyper specific, where it's like, did you need to have this many conditions and words on the card? I don't know. They're obviously going for something here, but it's like, okay, well, if you do excess damage and then they have an artifact and it's not a creature and it costs 3 or less, yep, you get to blow it up. It's like, sure, that will work some of the times, and you'll kill a treasure or you'll kill like a 2 mana rock or whatever, but it's like, it's not pretty text. It really isn't. This is not an elegant design. It's not a simple design, and I don't think it's particularly good design. It just is what it is. It's going to play fine, though. It's obviously a powerful card.
Yeah. Yeah, only 1 mana, and you could potentially kill 2 things. That's pretty good. Next card. This is right up our alley, Luis. This is called School Daze, DAZE. This is 3 blue for an instant. It is uncommon, and it says choose 1. You can do your homework. And if you do, you draw 3 cards. So instant speed, 5 mana, draw 3. Or you can fight crime. And if you fight crime, you counter target spell, but they throw you a little something. You do get to draw 1 card still.
You know what this is?
What is this?
This is Mystic Confluence.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's straight up, we just got Mystic Confluence.
We got Mystic Confluence.
It's either counter a spell, draw a card, or draw 3 cards. Yeah. It's obviously a lot worse than actual Mystic Confluence, which does these but draws 2 when it counters and it bounces creatures. But that's a good card in Vintage Cube. So, getting this as a random uncommon. Yeah, this card looks great. I think that Fight Crime is the better version. Like, obviously, what's sick about this card is you just leave it up, and if they play something good, you counter it and draw a card, and if they don't, you draw 3, and you're just like in the money either way. Right. Most of the time in Limited these days, I think if you're casting this on turn 5, you'd rather counter a spell and draw 2.
Totally. I mean, especially if you're countering something that costs 4 or 5 from them and getting that big tempo hit plus the card in hand, that's gnarly. Artwork's cool too. Peter's thinking he's got his books or his mask and he's deciding which one. Next one is Spider Manifestation. This is 1 and a red or 1 and a green. You can choose. It's a 2/2 spider avatar. This is common. This card's pretty good. It's got reach, I guess because it's a spider. It also taps for green or red. And whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, you untap this thing. That part's fine, but wow. 2 mana, easy to cast, reach, with it also taps for 2 different colors of mana. Like, what the heck?
I mean, a 2 mana 2/2 that taps for a mana would be great. The 2 mana 1/2 that taps for a mana is actually still pretty playable. We get a 1/3 and we consider ourselves pretty happy these days. Add in reach, and then it randomly untaps sometimes. So sometimes on turn 6, you're like, play a 4-drop and then untap, play a 3-drop or something. That sounds pretty good. This card looks awesome.
It does, especially at common. Like, that's really impressive. To me, when I see a card this pushed, I either think that's going to be one of the best commons in the set, or that color pair needed something. Like that, that maybe it's in a home that isn't so great, and that's why we see it so good. Because that just stands out. I mean, that could, if you told me that was an uncommon, I'd believe you easily. Last card is an uncommon. It's called Web Shooters. It's 1 and a white for an artifact equipment. It's uncommon, like I said. Equip cost is 2, and the equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has reach. And whenever this creature attacks, tap target creature an opponent controls.
Yeah, typically that effect hasn't played out great, but we'll have to kind of see how what the set and the format are like to know whether this is good. Because I think on a baseline, this is not a very good card. Mm-hmm. The worst of the cards we're seeing today, for sure, by a wide margin. If white's aggressive enough and there's good curves into this or good payoffs, maybe there's some things that reward you for equipment, who knows, then this could be kind of nice. But as it currently stands, it's a bit under a little bit behind the curve.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is, back to the more old school design for equipment where you just got to pay. Like, there's no token, there's no free equip. Like, you just got to pony up the mana to get this thing going. But like you said,
given us the taste of getting it for free. How can they can't turn back the clock?
It is a little tough. But I will say, from a top-down design perspective, yeah, that all checks out. Although I do wonder if they just end up putting reach on everything because everything's a spider or spider adjacent, and maybe flyers in this set are a little less potent than they normally would be. I guess that question's for later down the line. Okay, so those are our previews there. I guess we're going to do a review on this set. I'm still a little confused. With products like this that don't fit the normal archetype, I always have a little bit of a hard time kind of sussing out what I'm supposed to make out of it. I was talking to producer Jeff before we started recording, and I was thinking, we had a few sets that were mostly or all reprints. And until we got our hands on it, I was like, am I supposed to assume that this set's really awesome for draft? Or is it a little bit more like we might as well make it draftable, throw some extra cards in there and, why not type of deal where, the expectation would be a bit lower. And with this one, they're doing the 4-player 2-card draft format. And I'm not 100% sure, like, is that like just to make it work so that they could get some draft experience out of it? Or is that something they actually want to explore and think, has meat on the bone for drafters? And I can't really, I guess maybe until we actually get our hands on it, I may not know that. Do you have any sense for it?
My slightly cynical self thinks that this was a kind of like a solution designed to fit a problem, not so much.
Okay.
We think it didn't start from, we think 4-player draft is an awesome experience. Let's lean into it. It's more like, how can we make a draft format for a smaller set that requires fewer people? Because one of the biggest choke points for draft is it requires 8 people. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have a hard time. It doesn't require 8. You can do 6 totally fine. Yeah. But a lot of people, a 4-person play group is a more realistic number. And especially for a set that I think they would assume is going to be fairly popular in paper, because in paper is where you get all the Spider-Man cards as opposed to Arena. Like, there's more of a difference to think this would be more popular in paper relative to most sets, right? Mm-hmm. I think trying to build a format to like, how can we draft this with 4 players is good. The other thing is Aftermath. Remember the March of the Machine set? Was one of the least popular sets of all time. It did horribly. People it was like a small set, like a really small set, like not even like a full expansion, but like a small like addition. And it was even legal and standard and stuff. And it did horribly. People were just like, I don't understand or want whatever this is. And I thought I heard, and I could be wrong here, so don't crucify me if I am, that Spider-Man was going to be smaller, and after Aftermath, they're like, we need to make this a bigger set because like no one wants a 75 card set. So I think Spider-Man is like 180 cards, right? Something along those lines.
Okay.
Again, could be wrong about that. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here, but I think the 4-player draft was in part created so like how can we work with a smaller draft pool and maybe require fewer people. That's all to say it could just be a totally fun and fine format. I'm clearly going to try it, but Do I think it's going to be better in an 8-player draft? No, and given that I draft 99% online, where getting up to 8 is just not hard, I would rather just draft a regular 8-player draft. But this is what we got, and the cards do look cool. So let's see how this goes.
Yeah. So we'll just remain open-minded and give it a shot, but with maybe an eyebrow raised about the intentions on it. All right, let's get to some questions here. Our first, this is our Q&A episode. We try to do these about once a cycle. We didn't get to it last cycle, but we love doing these. These are where we open up questions about any topic. So it can be Magic related, but also these questions can be anything, life related, whatever is on your mind. And we put it up on our Patreon, and our Patreon supporters get to ask the question. So our first one comes from Lasse, who says, how do you guys explain Magic to non-Magic folks who ask? I usually just say it's Pokemon for adults, but that sometimes gets misinterpreted by someone with a dirty mind. Wow. Okay. The go-to explanation is like it's a blend of poker and chess, right? It has the strategic element, but also the randomness of poker. And those are two games that are popular enough so that people can kind of start to go, oh, okay, I can see, where that's coming from. And I've used that one before, in Uber rides or whatever, where just to keep it as simple as possible. If I get a chance to talk a little bit more, I'll usually kind of try to impart that the game has been around for a long time and it appeals to a lot of different groups of gamers, right? There's people like Luis and I who really relish the high level competitive kind of technical aspect of the game. But I mean, go to a MagicCon, right? And you'll see all different types of enjoyment of the game, from ancillary stuff like the lore, cosplay, that kind of thing, to different ways to play like Commander, Draft, Constructed, all that kind of stuff, to collectors who just like to get the cards. Across the board, the artwork, there's so many different facets to it that I try to kind of say that it, for the most part, if you're into gaming, it'll probably have something for you. But again, that's the one where I'm talking to somebody who I'm in a conversation with rather than they go, what is this Magic thing? And I'll say, oh, it's a strategy card game. It's been around forever. And if they want to ask a little more, I might throw them the poker and chess thing. How do you describe it?
Well, for me, it's actually been a little different. So the way it comes up is often someone asking, hey, what do you do for work? Right. Mm-hmm. And where I go is like, well, have you heard of a game called Magic the Gathering? And at least in the last couple of years, everyone I've talked to has just been like, oh yeah, I know Magic. Yeah. So I actually haven't really run into the what is Magic questions so often recently. And it just shows you a sign of the times. Cause like a lot of the people I'm interacting with are people, in their 30s and 40s, who are parents, like at, for example, our daycare. We're we're at a party the other day that for all the folks in preschool. And it's like people in that age bracket generally know what Magic is. Like a lot of them do. And then I have the challenge of explaining what it is I do for work, because it sounds kind of ridiculous. Like how much time do you have? I have different scripts based on how much time. Like,
totally.
If it's like I don't really want to talk about this / it's going to be fast.
Yeah.
It's like. It'll be like, oh, I work in game design or something like that, or oh, I do marketing, But like, obviously, I can talk about being a former professional player, doing a podcast, all that kind of stuff. When it comes to like the Magic question, because I've had that conversation plenty of times. Yeah, I'll say it's a combination. It's like somewhere between poker and chess, or a combination of poker and chess, or it's like a card form of like Dungeons and Dragons, or Pokemon. It kind of depends who I'm talking to. At this point, if they don't know what Magic is, or I don't think they know what Magic is, that'll generally be people on the older side, or on the very younger side, actually. But I would say that my hit rate of like people between the ages of like 20 and 40, it's pretty easy for them to know what Magic is. 20 and 50 even at this point. So I mostly haven't found that to be the stumbling block in the conversation.
Bitsawolf says, you're invited over to a Magic-themed Halloween party hosted by Wizards. They have professional costume designers at the ready. So what costume or character are you going with? That's great.
Oh, I mean, Urza, Lord High Artificer, as long as they give me a little construct to follow me around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can bring one of the kids. Yeah. This is my construct. I had to dress up as Karn once for a video that Maria did.
Oh, because you're tall.
Yeah. But I think, I want to be like I'd want to be clever, you know, like, do you get the reference kind of thing rather than like, I'm Jace or something like that. Right. So it would have to be, do you think maybe they could dress me up as the Man of War art that I like the one where the shark's kind of getting dragged, like I could drag a shark behind me by some ropes or whatever? Because if I can get that, then I would do that one. Next one comes from Ian, who says, any advice or heuristics for balancing listening to your gut with listening to reason? I've spent most of my life on the latter, but painful lessons got me trusting my gut much more, which has overall been a great and healthy change. But it's also meant I've skipped experiences people told me I'd love, but my gut still tells me I'd hate, including the Final Fantasy set. When is your gut lying? And is seeing it all as risk management getting too logical again? Boy, Ian, I love that. Luis and I have talked about this topic a lot over the years.
Yeah, it's tricky. For me, my gut is at its worst, like when I'm not quite practiced enough, but I'm still kind of playing off of intuition. So like you know, like I find that if I'm completely out of practice, I know I need to practice. And if I'm practiced, then I'm generally pretty good. The midpoint where I have been playing some but not quite enough is the worst, because then I'm trying to lean on something that's not really stable, which is my intuition isn't really up to speed. So I would say that right when a format starts, you can definitely get some good initial impressions and stuff like that, but you might not be fully understanding everything that's going on. And certainly if you haven't, for me, it's the worst when it's like kind of like the last week or two of Final Fantasy, where I had not played Final Fantasy for a week or two much, and then I start playing again, and I'm like, oh, you feel a little out of your depth. You feel a little like, okay, I don't really know what's going on.
Right. Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Ian. I think that there's not a coincidence that as you've gotten older, you've decided to trust your gut more. And I think that that's because in many cases, it's backed up by the work that you've done by really thinking things through. Those do go hand in hand to a point, right? You don't just have this like random gut feeling where you're just like, I just know in my gut. You know, it's usually based off of accumulation of experiences and some type of subconscious process that, you know, leads you to kind of push one direction or the other. And I generally would say, especially if you have a strong gut feeling, that I would be much, much more willing to go with it. I do think 100% you're onto something when you asked, is seeing it all as risk management getting too logical again? And the answer is yes. That's something that both Luis and I mean, I would say we almost kind of bonded over it, because our friend group, particularly the pro Magic players and stuff, they definitely can take that too far, where like everything's kind of boiled down to some number or some, you know, outcome, where, you know, it really does kind of take the spontaneity and joy out of life if you're just always viewing every decision, every single thing through that lens of risk reward and, you know, upside, downside, EV, however you want to put it. I do think it's the most useful lens to view life through, and I do view it primarily through that. I think that leads you to better decisions over the long term. But when it's every decision, it's like, you just got to calm down on it. It really just makes stuff. It's just like, sometimes you just do something because you felt like doing it and you wanted to. And yeah, you could go through the whole process of, well, I could do this other thing, and what's the opportunity cost, and it's just like, man, you just got to chill out sometimes and just do the thing. And, you know, part of that too, if you want to still keep it related to that framework, is, look, you're not going to do something that's going to be like crazy or risk your life, right? So you're going to do something that maybe you wouldn't normally do, or, you know, that you're curious about or whatever. You can also live with the fact that if you go, yeah, that wasn't that great, that's okay. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. You don't have to try to head every single thing off at the pass like that. So definitely, I would definitely trust my gut on that one, Ian, about not overdoing it, though. I will say, if you compare two different people and one of them generally uses that framework and the other one is unaware of that framework, I'm going to place a lot of bet on the person who uses the framework, because most people don't. And they seemingly make decisions at random where you're just, you know, it's the person that comes home and goes, I bought a new car. And you're like, you weren't car shopping. Like, what happened? Right. And they're like, well, the guy said I could have it for this much a month. And you're like, well, how much are you paying for the car? They're like, I don't know, but isn't it sweet? And it's just like, yeah, okay. You know, like we're reading the world through a different lens. Sebastian says, what's your favorite draft set with a trinkets theme? Theme is strong, but like, have we had draft sets that you would say had a trinkets theme?
I think the one that sticks out to me is like Brothers War.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of the bonus sheet cards were like
one?
were like Chromatic Star and Mishra's Bauble and Icar Wellspring and stuff like that. And so like there was a lot of trinkety stuff going on in that. I enjoyed that set.
Yeah. I think of like any of the sets that routinely put like maybe non-treasure things like clues. What was the first clues set?
I mean, the first clues were in Innistrad, right? I think that was the first time clues showed up.
There was one, maybe an Innistrad spinoff later that was really like kind of clue heavy, and I really like that. Jeremy says, hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. I've noticed that sometimes the cards are pre-sleeved for drafts at the Pro Tour. I assume this is because they are because there are double-faced cards in the set. Taking that out of the equation, which is your preference, if any, from both perspectives of coverage and a player? Do you like when they pre-sleeve the cards?
Like for the PT drafts? Yeah. I'd rather not have, like, the double-faced cards can lead to some kind of awkward things in like timed drafts, like if they're visible. Online, obviously it doesn't matter because you can't see it. And then on like an F&M draft, like people just kind of draft. You don't have to like make a big production out of it. But at a Pro Tour, like it actually does matter. And I've told the story about the Grand Prix finals where it was me, Ifro, and
was it Paul?
God, it wasn't actually Chian, it was Benes, I think. Yeah, it was me, Ifro, and Benes. When we played against Huey, Owen, and Reed, we had our teams come to an agreement as to what we do when we opened a double-faced card because the judges were not giving us any direction. And then I opened a double-faced card. So there
you go.
And the agreement we came to was whoever opens it has to pick before anyone else at the table. And I did pick it, first pick. It was Chandra and Origins. The little flip Chandra, the 3-mana 2/2 that pinks for one and like untaps and you play a red spell. So I first picked face-up red card and drafted mono red. So it actually worked fine, but it was just funny because we were like, what do we do if we open a double face card? They're like, oh, well, you just, what do you mean? We just you just draft. And I'm like, well, who goes first? They're like, oh, because it's like, if I open this Chandra and the person to my right is deciding between a red card and a blue card, if they see I'm picking a red card, they're going to want to pick the red card.
Totally.
And if they don't, they're going to want to take the blue card, assuming they're comparable. So we're just like, let's not make it like a timing thing, and let's just say whoever opens a double face card has to pick first. And if there's two of them, we would have them both pick, I guess. I don't know. But it worked out okay. Generally, funny. I think pre-sleeving is good. I don't like the draft. I don't think the double face cards should impact the drafting process more than they have to. I think that's not ideal.
Right. Jeremy also says, recently my girlfriend and I went to a Korean barbecue restaurant. If you aren't familiar with these, we're familiar, buddy. It's where you select a bunch of ingredients and they bring them to you to cook at your table. We made the experience pretty entertaining for us. What made the experience pretty entertaining for us is that we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into when we went there. Oh, that's funny. It was a pretty fun experience once we started figuring things out. Have you ever been to a place like this? If so, what are some recommendations or tips you might have? Oh yeah, we've been to a place like, so many of these are all you can eat, Jeremy. And so if you get a Paul, a Luis, and a Marshall in the same city, there's a decent chance that we end up at a all you can eat Korean barbecue. And my recommendation is that you bring Paul with you, because that guy is on point. So we went to one of these at the last Pro Tour in Vegas where he lives now. The coverage team did. And when the person comes by to get the initial order, he has it all listed, right? He had it written out on his phone. I'm like, great. So I just have to sit there and he says, we want one of these, two of these, one of these, one of these. And then, when you get half or 3/4 of the way through getting those, they'll usually come back in and say, does anybody want anything else? Paul, phone up again. Yep, here we go. And starts ripping through the list. And I'm just sitting back because he knows the good stuff to order. And, and what I would suggest, of course, is just to try many different things, and then you can just get more of the one that you really liked, so you don't have to, you can be pretty experimental and it's pretty chill. To be clear, this is Korean barbecue. It is not like American barbecue food where it's like big portions and heavy. This is like thinly sliced meat that you cook at a burner at your table. So any one order of the meat or even vegetables or whatever you get, it's not that much actual food. So even if you don't like it that much, you can just kind of eat it and just say, I'm not going to get that one again. And if you do like it, you can run it back and get a few more. You have any pro tips for KBBQ, Luis?
First of all, it's great. I go every couple weeks, I would say, or every week or two. I mean, there's some good ones around here, and I both like the experience of cooking the meat, and like the experience of just it has like a ton of different appetizers and sauces and stuff like that. Obviously, going with Cheon is the nuts, but I'm pretty good too. Like I know how to cook everything. I know what all the different meats and stuff are at this point.
You're not bad.
My biggest thing is try everything. Like try all the appetizers, because like you're not first of all you're not going to necessarily like them all. The goal isn't necessarily to eat everything there, but like trying everything gives you a sense of like, oh, I really like these. For example, my favorites are like the cucumber kimchi. Is my favorite of the sides. But you know, like the daikon's good. The kind of like the regular kimchi's fine. The fish cake is pretty good. The cheese corn is really good.
Cheese corn's very popular. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's easier to cook than you think. It's also kind of like a good way to get used to cooking meat if you don't cook a lot of meat at home. Cause like, it's not exactly what you do at home. Cause most of the time you don't have like such a hot griddle and such a like thin sliced meat, but it can build your confidence. Like, oh, I can cook this, and it's cooking without the cleaning. That's the best part.
Yeah.
So my approach for all these places is try everything the first time and then narrow down on the stuff you want. So like at this point, I know which meats I like. I don't usually just get or try the ones I don't like as much because I've already figured out the ones I like the most. But the first time you're there, you should definitely just try to experience all of them.
Blue Beats and then a second from Kevin Wynn. They both asked the same question. Any initial thoughts about the upcoming pick 2 draft format WotC is debuting with Spider-Man? What are the potential upsides and downsides from a game design perspective? And Kevin also followed up with, does picking 2 change your draft approach at all? You know, the closest we've had to this is like Two-Headed Giant draft, right? Where you're sitting with a person and taking 2 cards. But so technically there's 8 people at the table, but you're drafting together. So when the pack comes to you as a pair, you each select 2, you select 2 cards as a pair, and they go into a communal pile that you then use to make 2 picks. So it's really similar to this. It's just there's one person sitting there instead of 2, but it's the same card distribution and everything. And yeah, sure. I mean, it does change it. It feels very super powered. I mean, think of all the times you've drafted where you just got that one pack that had the 2 really good cards and you're just like, oh, I wish I could take both of these. Now you can. So, you know, it is a more clear way to send signals. Like everything's kind of supercharged about it as far as, you know, the picks you get are that much better. The signals you send are that much stronger. And the packs only last, I mean, they go quickly, right? Like it's just bang, 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 and then they're gone because everybody's taking 2 cards. I
mean, combos can be better. I think it does sound in a lot of ways worse design wise. Cause like, part of the fun of first picking a build around is like, ooh, am I going to get the cards that work with it? It's a little, I think, less of an anticipatory thing. If you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take the build around and the combo card. It's like, you know, I get to take Tinker and Portal to Phyrexia out of the same pack. There's a little bit less tension there.
Right.
But, you know, I opened Underworld Breach and Brain Freeze. I guess I know what I'm doing, you know. But it is fun to take 2 cards. I've done a lot of 2HG draft, and it's fun that you know you're going to get these 2 cards in combo, and it doesn't take a lot of picks to really change your direction. Imagine you go take 2 blue cards, take 2 blue cards. If you take 2 red cards on your next pick, you actually significantly change the direction that your draft might be going. Do I think it'll be better than normal draft? Probably not, but it has some upsides. I do think it is a real upside that you only need 4 people to draft. I mean, there's a lot of people who will get to draft now who wouldn't have drafted otherwise. I think that's cool. And I think some people will enjoy the slightly more, not solitaire exactly, but a little bit more tightly, like the range is not as wide when you're just taking 2 and you're getting fewer picks and those picks are bigger. I mean, to take it to an extreme, imagine if draft was pick 5 and you only had 3 picks per pack. You'd again still end up with the same amount of cards, but the amount of variance would go down quite a bit because you're just always like able to take, okay, I'm going to take 3 black cards and 2 red cards in the first pack, and then 2 black cards, 2 red cards, and a colorless card in the second pack. And it's just like 2 picks in, as it were. You've seen now 2 packs and you already have a pretty firm direction. So I would say clearly, and this is a good rhetorical tool. What happens if you take this to an extreme? What happens if you keep going bigger? And obviously you keep going bigger, you end up with sealed deck. That's just draft where you pick the whole pack. And there's no decisions.
Right.
So draft starts at the smallest number, 1. You can't take less than 1 card per pack. and they're doubling that to 2, and that's going to have some changes here, which I think some push in the positive direction, some in a negative direction. Overall, it sounds like a little bit less fun, but I without playing it, I don't really have a lot of confidence in that.
Yeah, it makes me think about the sweet spot, because I do think that there's one possible outcome here, which is, these drafts do go faster, a lot faster, right? Because it's just bang, 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 bang. Okay, here's your pile. So the draft portion's a lot quicker. And, as we've seen, there's an appetite for that, right? Best of one is kind of the default way to play now. But, if you would have asked me about that before Arena came out, I would have said, no way. That's not what Magic is. We play best 2 out of 3. That's just what a match is. And, I think that the sweet spot for draft was after leagues were introduced, so that you have the quick matchmaking. But still, best 2 out of 3 is, to me, the most interesting way to play. I hate to beat
this drum too much. Do you remember when people said that the draft leagues weren't going to be fun?
Yeah.
that one we did. We
were way ahead of that one. Yeah. And that, to me, I think was the sweet spot, because before that, you had to just play all 3 matches after your 1 card at a time draft, and that was way too big of a time commitment. But, breaking it up to 4 chunks of draft, round, with a basically on demand, you're in a draft, or on demand, you're playing a match, I think is kind of the sweet spot where, I think for a game like Magic that's more cerebral, it's more intricate, I think that's kind of the nice spot to be. But I mean, look, I play best of 1, so I totally understand it. It's kind of just where it's at now. But I would be curious to see if, this is even faster way to get through the draft, and if Wizards is interested in that, and if the player base really responds to it. I mean, I'm not predicting it, but we could be on the precipice of a fundamental change to how we do draft.
That's not going to be the case, but I think if our confidence level on leagues being, I think, a better way to play online was very high, and we were, I think, right about that. I don't think that was particularly close. My confidence level on draft, pick 2 draft being less fun is not that high, and it could be a totally good product to fit into this whole ecosystem, where some people want to play it for, because they do want to play with fewer people, or they like the picking 2 part. I could see it being a totally acceptable variant.
Yeah.
Curious. I guess it's not a huge shift, but again, we'll see.
Guillaume says, "Hey, Marcel and Luis, love the work. Where do you think power creep in Limited is going to take us? I don't view this necessarily as a bad thing. Playing powerful cards is fun, as Ben S. says. Short term, we adapt our scale of picks, and we always have enough playables. And you also regularly point out how the so important game planning is affected. Use your removal more liberally. All creatures draw cards. You always have something to do with your mana, etc. Let's imagine 10 years from now, the power keeps increasing. What should the designers keep in mind to keep Limited fun and even more awesome?"
Well, power creep is interesting because it definitely is real. I mean, look at how we evaluate a 3-mana 3/3 or a 4-mana 3/4 versus what they used to be.
Totally.
And at this point, even 5-mana 3/3 flying or 5-mana 3/4 flying is below the curve, where it used to be oh, that's great. It used to be 4-mana 2/2 flyer was good. So yes, power creep's happening. There can be resets between sets where it doesn't have to always just go up. Obviously that is a tendency that happens over time, but they can kind of bring it back to baseline or normalize it a little bit. And it actually has felt like it's been somewhat steady for the past, 5-7 years. Yes, if you go back 15 years, 20 years, it's not close when you compare the power level of the sets. I don't feel like, Edge of Eternities or Final Fantasy is it that much stronger than something like Kaldheim or Strixhaven?
I don't think so.
Maybe it is, and I'm just misremembering. I'm sure people could probably find some examples, but I can't think of a big gap in the last, let's say, 5 years between sets where it's oh, this set's clearly much stronger than that set. I mean, there have been some, March of the Machines, I remember being a fairly powerful set and had some pretty powerful bonus sheet cards, but I would say overall, power creep can be a gradual thing, and it can go up and down where sets some can be just more or less powerful. It does take away some, there are some negative effects, games are faster. How often have we talked about how, well, you don't have a 2-drop, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's good to continue to go down that direction as opposed to the other direction. I would rather, oh, you missed your 2-drop on the draw. Yeah, you can still win that game. Then you have to mulligan if you don't have a 2-drop, or if you miss your 2-drop on the draw, you're now 20% to win the game or something like that. I would prefer it be like, if you miss your 2-drop on the draw, maybe 40% to win the game or 35%. But now it's like, well, if you're on the draw, first of all, you're already at like 46%. And if you miss a play on turn 2 and they have a play on turn 2, you're down to 20%. And then these are, I'm just guessing at numbers, but I think this is close to what the numbers are probably feel like a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think
so. I wouldn't mind it being a little bit slower, a little bit less powerful in that sense.
Yeah. What about the complexity creep side of it? I feel like I'm always worried about that, but it doesn't feel like Wizards is. So, and they obviously know more about it than I do. So I always feel a little bit of a responsibility to make sure that Limited, specifically that we love, is at least open enough to new players that they don't feel completely overwhelmed just by trying out a draft. And I don't know, man, like if I was new and I tried Final Fantasy, I'd probably just be like, whoa, like this is so much. Like I'm never going to be able to understand all these cards. I think that the power creep is relative to itself, but the complexity creep isn't. Like it can just kind of keep
That's
going.
A great point. Those are just two different things. Complexity and power, they're not in lockstep. Cards that are more complex, I think, will trend to be a little more powerful because they're doing more things. They could no longer make, a 5-mana 3/3 with 1 line of text. Now it has 5 lines. But complexity by itself, I think, is a pretty big downside. There's a reason for it. You're trying to make your cards do novel things and more interesting things. But my tendency as a designer is always to go simpler. And yes, I think that's actually more dangerous than power creep, because power creep, obviously can lead to some undesirable things, but so what if the average 4-mana card is a 4/3 instead of a 3/3 now, or a 4/4 instead of a 3/3? Like, that's fine. If the cards are all so complicated as reading them isn't fun, playing with them isn't fun, that's a very big difference.
Next question comes from David, who says, hey guys, EOE has been solid in my IMO when it comes to gameplay, but I'm still not sold on Spaceships as a limited staple. The only ships I've put into my decks have been the ones with an ETB that makes an impact upon casting. I also don't sink much into them unless I summon and sink in due to sickness. Once I station the ship, more than half the time it just gets destroyed. My question is, do you feel this type of card is better or worse than vehicles? And do you see it being an evergreen mechanic at any point, whether or not in the form of a spaceship or any other vessel? And David says that they feel a bit subpar to him overall. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they just missed the mark a little bit as far as like cost and power, but not really card type. The only real complaint I would have about them is that they do feel a little bit on the win more side of things. When you're behind, you're usually not in a position to get spaceships stationed, but when you're ahead, you often can, and then it puts you that much further ahead. But mainly, Luis talked about it, but it just feels like they just needed to be a little bit more powerful, to make a stamp on the limited format, whether that's a little bit cheaper on the mana cost and or a little bit less to station or a little bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is like fundamentally a card type issue. I think it is more of a rate issue. Like, how powerful do they make the cards? If they had made them a little more powerful, we would see them play more. If they, or not even more powerful, like in total, but what if they moved more of the power into the body as opposed to the ETB? And the way to do that would be to make the crew cost lower, the station cost lower. Like, imagine you had the exact same card, the Caesarian Dirgecraft, right? The 5-mana 4/3, they sack a non-token creature. It is like station 7, make it a 4/3. What if it was station 5? It would just, you'd see it as a 4/3. Obviously, it's just a better card then, but that's okay. Maybe you take off the non-token part and it's just they sack a creature, so it's worse against tokens, but they more often is a 4/3. And you could have knocked again. You could have knocked down, I think, the station cost on a lot of these a bit, and still been a totally like reasonable card for the format. Obviously, if you do it too much, like if you make like the Debris Field Crusher was like one of the most egregious. Like 5-mana 1/5, deal 3 to any target, crew 8, station 8 to become a creature, and you can pay 2 to get it +1+ or +2+. So it's like, imagine if it was a 3/5 and it was station 6. That'd be a lot stronger of a card, and more of the card would be expressed in combat. So
right,
they didn't want to do that for whatever reason. They didn't want to push the envelope. Maybe they're You kind of don't want a smuggler's copter. That was a vehicle that was like so pushed that got banned. And, ultimately probably not a great thing to do, though it's a pretty cool card. It now sees an appropriate amount of play, I would say.
Yeah.
Which is to say not a whole lot, but it is a strong card. And to avoid that, they just went pretty conservative on all these. And it would have been nice if they pushed them a little more. If the spacecraft come back, there's no reason why that can't be the case. Especially since now they've seen how these played out. And I bet if I had to guess, if you were to ask the designers of Edge of Eternity, hey, do you wish you had juiced the spacecraft a little more? I think they'd say yes.
Yeah, just a little. Yeah, I think spacecraft were fine. They missed maybe a little bit on power level, but not on like fundamental design. Martin says, "Hi guys. Thanks for your great work and greetings from Germany. Multiple questions from me today. One, there were so many wraths in EOE and I tried all of them, but I'm still struggling to find the right timing and also when to play creatures, when to hold back, and when to use my single target removal before the wrath. Do you have any advice on that? And also, what about when I don't have the wrath in my hand at all?"
Well, it's tricky when you don't have the wrath, because when you don't have the wrath, you are kind of, you have to eventually make a choice of like, am I going to play in such a way that if I don't draw wrath in the next 3 turns, I'm in trouble? You usually don't want to do that because you're not going to draw it in the next 3 turns. So you usually kind of have to play, not as if you don't have wrath in your deck, but as if you don't accurately know when it's going to show up, and it might be never. When you do have wrath in hand, that's also tricky. Usually, I think a good rule of thumb is you probably don't want to take more than like 5 damage to try to set up getting an additional turn's worth of creatures.
Yeah.
But using a removal spell, here's a way to look at it too. Let's say it's turn 4, end of their turn. They have like 2 creatures in play, and let's say you have nothing in play, and your hand is like a wrath and a removal spell. Well, if they have like a 5/5 and a 2/2, it's pretty reasonable to use a removal spell to kill their 5/5. Next turn, maybe you do nothing, or hopefully you can spend your mana on a way that isn't wrath and isn't obvious you have a wrath. And then maybe they play more things and you cast the wrath. Otherwise, if your hand is all creatures, let's say you have a removal spell, a wrath, and a bunch of creatures in your hand, nothing productive to spend your mana on, I'd probably just untap wrath and then just have creatures +1 removal spell. Just take your 2 for 1. You don't need to like get greedier. Certainly, I'm not taking 7 and doing nothing, hoping to wrath more things. Because if I'm the opponent and my opponent has a grip of cards, especially in this format with 75 sweepers, I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, great, the way is clear, let's play 2 more creatures. But if they killed my 5/5 end of turn and then played something else, and then didn't play anything, I wouldn't necessarily think they had wrath. I thought maybe they just had a bad hand. The other thing to think about, especially in this format, is what if they spend their next turn playing like an ultra, specimen ship or whatever, like the draw 2 vehicle. Like if they're playing spacecraft on your next turn and you have wrath, it's just going to feel so bad, unless you have, I guess, Beyond the Quiet Eternities and it kills all the spacecraft too. But what are the odds that your opponent's going to spend mana on something that doesn't get hit by your wrath? Like in constructed, that's often like a planeswalker. Here, it's most often like a spacecraft. So basically, I am not that greedy on wraths. I just tend to often, if I can get like a 2 for 1 or or a 3 for 2 or something, I'm usually just like in kind of clear the board, and then they get maybe a turn to play something, and then I get to play all my stuff. That's fine. If you have reason to think like they're going to just keep rushing stuff out, they're an all creature deck, and you can take another hit or you can survive, that's fine. Another play to make is you play a bad creature, and ideally, again, you don't chump because that just signals wrath.
I know.
My opponent's at 15 and chumps a 5/5 with a 2/2. I'm like, okay, well, I guess wrath's coming.
Right.
So mostly I would say don't get overly greedy on it. And if you can use a removal spell to buy you 2 turns, that's often worth it. If a removal spell is only going to buy you 1 turn, then maybe just wrath instead.
Yeah, I lean towards being more conservative, meaning I'm willing to just take my money when it's on the table with the wrath for the most part, because of exactly what Luis said. How many times have you played against a player, especially if your ranking gets a bit higher, where you just don't do anything, they attack you with their 3 creatures, they pause and they just go, go, and they've got 5 cards in their hand. They could have played something out, but people just don't do that. And you have to be willing to throw, your virus beetle in front of their 5/5 and also hope that they just thought, oh, well, I guess my opponent's just messing around. That doesn't happen that often. People know these days. You're very rarely going to get the person who just full on head, into the wall, into your wrath for a 4 for 1. So just be happy with a 2 for 1 or a 2.5 for 1 or something like that. and move on. And occasionally you'll top deck it, or your opponent will be greedy or overzealous, and you can just, get that complete blowout where they can just never really come back. Charles says, hey guys, thanks for the years of entertainment and knowledge. I love nachos. I can make pretty good ones, but I think there's room for improvement. Do you have any tips for great nachos?
Okay.
This is what the Q&A show's for.
See that rookie mistake is to just be like, here's a bowl of nachos and put a bunch of chips on a bowl or a plate and like stack the chips and then put toppings on the top. What you got to do is you got to like do a layer of chip, just one chip, like on a pan, and then put the toppings that you want to go in the oven or the broiler, whatever you're going to use. So like, for example, I would put like refried beans and cheese and like if you had meat, just those, that's all you need to put on. And if you want, you can do another layer of chips, like another layer of those. I think that totally plays. Or you just do the one layer, but the point is don't stack dry chips on top of each other, because then the top chip goes and the rest of the chips are just dry. That's not nachos. That's chips. If you want chips, just open a bag of chips. Don't go through this whole rigmarole to just eat some chips. And then you like bake the nachos, not even that long, because you're not putting raw meat on them. It's cooked meat. It's cooked, the beans are ready. You just want to melt the cheese, basically. You're not looking to do a whole lot more than that. And then you put on the cold toppings. So you're like, guacamole or sour cream or salsa or jalapenos. Jalapenos actually can go on before too. It's fine to cook those in with the cheese. That works totally fine, whether it's pickled or fresh. I think nacho cheese is not as good as just regular melted cheese, whether that be, honestly, cheddar, Monterey Jack, mozzarella actually works pretty well. Mozzarella is surprisingly good in Mexican food. Like it makes a good like quesadilla cheese. It's kind of similar to Oaxacan cheese.
Okay.
But the like yellow, not liquidy nacho cheese, like, look, if that's your jam, you go for it. I'm not trying to tell you that you shouldn't eat it. I just think it tastes better with real cheese. So that's typically what I'll do. And then, some combo of guac, sour cream, salsa, jalapenos, a little bit of hot sauce maybe if you want, or like multiple salsas like pico de gallo and like green, salsa verde, something like that. But the main thing is just the layering. Make sure not to leave these chips high and dry. That's not where you want to be.
Totally. That's fundamentals. If you do that, you're just I love how like convicted you got it. Hey, if you just want chips, open up a bag of chips, dude. Like the other one little trick I've learned recently is if you do have an air fryer, really fast, like it works pretty good. You can kind of put them you can layer them in the thing and then just kind of dump them out, and it works pretty good. Marco says, how do you plan to handle the upcoming Spider-Man set when all the cards have different names on Arena? Wizards is heavily emphasizing the Spider-Man theme and everything I've seen so far, but most people play on Arena. Are you going to say both names every time you refer to a card on the show, switch off, or ignore one or the other? I don't understand how Wizards expects this to work. It seems like a nightmare, especially for content creators like yourselves. They don't even seem to be listing the second name in italics under the first name, under the first in the earlier version, in either version, like they've done in the past. Yeah, I think they can't. I think that's why they can't do that. Yeah. Dude, I agree, Marco. This is a freaking nightmare. We've never had to do this before.
Yeah, I asked. I don't know. Someone actually posted on the subreddit, and my comments like now the top comment. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what we should do. What should we do? And I think on the set review is we should say both names. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the people who listen to the set review are just going to go to their paper pre-release and play. Yeah. So I think it's a shorter set than, smaller set than normal. So we're able to kind of, I think, swing it time-wise. So my inclination is to say both names in the set review. When it comes to the week-to-week show, I don't know yet. I assume a lot of our listeners play online, but I bet a lot of them play in paper too. There's people play both. And I think if we could strive for maybe trying to do both names pretty quickly, especially as we the thing is we describe the mechanics of the card in the set review and in the first like couple shows. Generally, when you talk about cards, we also say what they do, and that really helps with the confusion.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that there's no way that Wizards preferred this. This is a compromise that they had to make to get the deal done, I think, because there's as content creators, we can whine about it, but it's not like they were over there being like, this is awesome, right? I mean,
it's not like I feel bad for them because like they did it because they thought this would make them the most money. This is the deal they had to make, and that's is what it is. But I'm also not really going to be too broken up about it. We just we deal with the things as they come.
I'm not going to treat it as a choice by them. Larry says, I'm a relatively new drafter and new to Magic. I try to stay open and pick the best cards through the first 8 picks, and then I settle in. But after watching Paul or LSV draft on YouTube, I wonder if that's right and if I should stay open longer and be more willing to pivot. What signals or signs should a player look out for to tell them they need to switch colors or add a color? Welcome, Larry.
There's no hard and fast rule, and this is a big part of what makes draft challenging and fun. But I would say that in general, if around 4th or 5th pick you see a premium card, like 1st or 2nd pick level card, that's a pretty good sign that like you should consider switching to that color, especially since 4th or 5th pick, you should not be locked into your colors. Like, look, sometimes you go like 1st pick Quantum Riddler, 2nd pick great blue card, 3rd pick great black card, 4th pick great black card. It would take a pretty good card for me to want to switch off, one of the best rares in the set, plus 2 3rd and 4th pick, like, let's say you got a Tragic Trajectory and a Monoist Circuit Feeder or something along those lines, right? Just premium uncommons. 5th pick, you would have to have a hell of a red card or whatever, or white card to make me want to switch into one of those colors.
Mm-hmm.
But it is possible if 5th pick you see something like, I don't know, a Biomechan Engineer or something like that, and you're like, okay, well, this is a really good card too, especially since that one's like a little tricky because maybe you're like now green, blue, splash black for these 2 good cards or whatever.
Right.
You can do it. The other thing you can do is hedge. Same scenario. 2 great blue cards, then 2 great black cards. You take a good green card. The next pack, it's just a good blue and black card. You take one of those. Next pack, another good green card. You take that. And the next pack, another good blue and black card. Now you take the reverse. End of like, let's say 9 picks. You have 3 blue cards, 3 black cards, 3 green cards, right? Not an ideal scenario, but you're going to get enough playables. Yeah. It's typically not going to be a big thing. Where it gets tricky is when you have this scenario and you have to decide between like a really strong blue card and a really strong green card, because there you're making a pretty big choice. But if these packs have like a really strong green card and your blue and black cards are both replacement level, then, like let's say there's like a Larval Scoutlander 7th pick, and the blue card that you could take is like a Self-Craft McCann, and the black card you could take is like a Grab Pack Monoist, right? The 3-mana 2/1 flyer. Take the Scoutlander. It's just quite a bit better than those other 2 cards. Yeah. Even if you end up down one of those cards, who cares? Whereas the Scoutlander, like just premium cards that are kind of what you would say like B-level cards and above, or something like for 17 lands, like maybe something like 58%, 57.5%, 58%. Like that's usually a pretty good cutoff for that kind of card too. Like that, those are cards I'll take a stab at, and I'm willing to like maybe pay the cost of missing out on a medium card.
Yeah.
And then you, let's say in a pack 1, you still haven't made a decision. That's totally fine. See what you open in pack 2, because let's say you open, another Quantum Riddler. Well, then you're 100% to play blue, and it doesn't matter how cut it is. Let's say you open an Ouroboros. Okay, now I'm 100% to play green. I don't matter how cut it is, and that's fine. And maybe you don't open the best card in the set, but maybe you open just like another really solid blue or green or black uncommon, and you just take that. And at some point, I would say about mid pack 2, you got to just make a decision. And at that point, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be blue-green now. I would take now a medium green card over a good black card, because it's just like you can't hedge forever. So when in doubt, take the more powerful card in the first pack, almost down the line. Not entirely, but almost down the line. Like in this scenario where I've a bunch of Sultai cards, even if I see a really good 7th pick red card at this point, I'm not really kind of trying to take too many shots. I'm probably still taking a medium green, black, or blue card. But even if I have 3 green cards and 3 blue cards, if I see a good black card 7th pick, like a good like uncommon level black card, let's say the delicacy, the -3/-3, the dubious delicacy,
yeah,
I'll probably just take it, because it's like, and I've said this many times on the show, when you're picking that card, you're not just picking that card. You're picking that card plus the implied future value that the person to your right is passing you good black 7th pick. It means they'll pass you good black 8th pick, 9th pick, and then in pack 3 the whole pack, maybe. You obviously don't know entirely, but the whole point of finding the open lane isn't just so you get a good 5th pick card. It's so you get a good 5th, 6th, 7th, 9th, and then now pick 3, pick 4 cards. That's where the real payoff is. So you're just trying to figure that out. But I generally go to power level, and then in the middle of pack 2, kind of just make a decision, because you don't want to wait too long. Then you're going to end up wasting picks.
Yeah, I echo everything that Luis said, Larry. I think it sounds like you were on the right track for a relatively new drafter, but I think you're willing, or you're ready now to push that boundary a little bit further and kind of really start to shore it up sometimes in the early part of the second pack rather than in your first 8 picks. I think you're ready for that. And as Luis outlined, there's a few different scenarios that pop up to lead you to that. Sometimes you have a whole bunch of cards in one color and a few feelers out in another. And sometimes you're kind of in the middle on a bunch of colors and you're looking to solidify. Keep that open mind. I think you're ready, Larry. Good luck with it. Ian says, hey, LSV, sell me on deep dish pizza. I've never really had a good one, but I've never really sought it out. I think you said before it's your favorite. I always sort of thought of it as a weaker type of pizza. Nice. I like these words. But you've become increasingly drawn to its potential in recent months. What are the things that make you love it?
Well, I mean, it's a very different experience, which is why I always found the whole New York style pizza is better than Chicago style pizza. Kind of like, sure, that's a little bit to me like saying like, well, I like sushi a lot better than I like, pad thai. It's like, yeah, you can like one of those things more. They're just not the same thing.
They're so different. Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit like comparing Korean barbecue and like American barbecue. I love them both. They're just not the same thing. They're very different. Mm-hmm. And thin crust pizza and Chicago style pizza, deep dish pizza are just really different. I do like the deep dish pizza, especially from Zachary's in California. That's my favorite. It is a little bit more like a slice of lasagna, if that's what you're in for. Like it's thick, it's got like sauce and toppings, and it's like more casserole-like. So I know a lot of people who are like, this is way worse than pizza. I like pizza more. I don't even like this. And I'm not going to argue with them. Yeah, sure. I believe you. I have no reason to think that you're lying, but I also don't care. So what I'm trying to say is, I think it's worth trying, especially if you get from somewhere good. I don't know where you are, but I will say that it actually travels pretty well if you order it like on Goldbelly, like frozen for like special events. Like when we do our fantasy football draft, we ordered some like pizzas from Chicago from
Luminati's, or
it was Lumelnati's. Yeah. It was. Pequod's also delivers. You could get a Pequod's, Marshall. It could be dropped on your doorstep.
I'm totally going to. I will. Yeah.
And I think it's worth trying one of those places. I would recommend against Giordano's. Giordano's is fine. That's like the most like well-known / touristy of all the places. They even opened one here in Denver, funnily enough.
Oh, did they? Oh.
Yeah. And it is totally fine. If you like deep dish pizza, you'll like Giordano's. But I do think like Lou Malnati's is better, and Pequod's is actually more like Detroit style pizza. It's like a cross between the two a little bit. It's a little different. But I think they're delicious. It's just a different experience. I don't like crunchy things as much as I like soft things. I don't like, like thick things as opposed to thin things. Like that's just a different kind of experience, but I do think it's good.
Zygmunt says, I've been playing Magic for a long time now, since Visions and 5th edition. Over the years, my interest in the game has ebbed and flowed because of a number of factors, both related to and unrelated to Magic. I'm going through a low period of engagement right now. Have either of you experienced periods of your lives where Magic lost a little of its luster? What did you do to break out of that funk and reinvigorate your engagement with the game? Thanks for answering my questions. Thanks for always the great questions, Sigmund. We appreciate it. Yeah, of course. I know, Luis and I have both experienced that type of thing. We kind of have a different baseline for it, though, because we do it for work as well. But I try not to fight that. If I'm feeling a little bit disengaged, I just kind of go with it. It's okay. And if a set really, because for me, Magic is very distilled at this point, right? The things that I really care about are drafting / this podcast and the Pro Tour / doing broadcasting for it. Like I want to see the very best players play, or I want to either be drafting or talk about drafting. And kind of Luis makes fun of me because I rarely know what's going on. With like the sets coming out and all this stuff, I'm always just like the last one to know. And that is because I really do have it just pared down to really what's in front of me and what I like about the game. And that's, partly so that I can remain engaged with it, because Magic is an overwhelming game. There's so much stuff coming out all the time. Everybody has an opinion on everything. It always feels like, somebody's saying that the sky is falling and the game's never going to be the same and this thing got ruined. And, there's all the same old arguments and all the same old stuff. And when you've been around for years and years, like I have, and especially like Luis has, you kind of had those conversations. So they become less interesting, and it's more like,
I just want to say you're older than me, buddy. So let's just chill.
No, I am, but you've been playing longer. You've been playing longer. Yeah, you do have me there. But yeah, and so for me, I find that if I try to fight it, if I'm like, no, I got to get into this set, that is not the way forward. That just kind of leads to burnout, and it makes me feel like I'm smashing my head against a wall. So I just go with the flow. When there's a set I'm really into, I'm drafting a whole bunch, we're jamming it on the show, I'm in, we're doing it. Right now, honestly, I'm kind of with you, Sigmund. Edge of Eternities is fine. I've been drafting. I drafted it last night. I trophied, and it's okay. It's a total, to me, I would call it a check mark set. It is a Magic set that checks the box on, yes, I can draft it, but it's not holding any special significance for me. Like when this set's gone, I will just, oh yeah, that was a space set, I guess. Like I won't remember that much about it. And that's fine. I'm okay with that, but that does mean for me a little bit lower on the engagement. Plus we have this for a long time. And then I'm a little skeptical about the Spider-Man draft style and the set and stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of with you on it. For me though, I don't fight it. What about you, Luis? How do you feel about your
I think your answer is actually really good. And I think as with many things on the podcast applies more than just Magic. I think I actually would like challenge you when you feel like, man, how do I get more engaged with Magic? I want to play more Magic, but I'm not feeling it. That's just yourself telling you you're not feeling it. Why do we need to push against that? Like specifically me and Marshall actually need to push against it sometimes because it's part of our job.
Right.
Even in our periods where we're being a little more disengaged with Magic, like it's kind of hard to not be playing some just because we have to. We do have professional responsibilities. That said, if this is your hobby and you're feeling some resistance, like, look, I am sympathetic to, I always have a great time when I go play Magic. I should make myself go play Magic more because that's a sign that maybe you should try to get over whatever that barrier is. It's kind of like if you said like, man, I don't get together with my buddies and play basketball much, but it's really fun when I do. Or similar, it's hard for me to get out to the gym, but I always feel really good when I go. And there you just have to like try to train yourself or get as much of the like, teach yourself this is upside, this has fun, and remember the good parts instead of whatever your initial hesitance is. But when it comes to what games you play, just play whatever is the most fun for you. You know how a lot of people say like, oh man, I'm really bad at time management or prioritizing what I do. And it's like, no, you're not actually. You are doing what you want to do. Like you might not think that's what you want to do, but the reality is what you do is what you want to do.
Yes.
Like obviously sometimes you're forced and like, you're like, I have to work 70 hours a week or I have to take overtime or do these shifts or I'm taking care of someone who's sick or whatever. I'm not trying to say that those things are like you doing them mean that's what you want to be doing the most. But in general, what you spend your time on is what you have decided as a thinking sentient being that this is what you should spend your time on. And of course, you're influenced by a lot of factors. Like I said, the things you have to do and the things that you are pleasurable for you to do or things you want to do. But generally, if it's like, I really want to run a 5K, but I just keep staying in my house playing video games. It's like, well, no, you don't really want to run a 5K. You want to run a 5K. Yeah. In theory, you want to run a 5K. What you want to do is stay home and play video games. And some of that is fine. I'm very pro staying home and playing video games if that's the thing you want to do. If you're trying to ask, how do I make myself do something I don't want to do because I think it'll be more fun? I'm mostly like, well, why don't you just naturally gravitate towards the things that are more fun and do those things? I think when it comes to Magic, how do you get out of a slump like that? Usually a little time doing some other stuff. I'm like playing a lot more Among Us these days than I am Magic, like in my free time, though I still play plenty of Magic. I think like waiting, Magic always has this great jumping in point. Wait till the next set. It's a refresh. Everyone's an even playing field. You get to discover and unpack a new set, whether that's for constructed or limited or cube or whatever. And that can always be a lot of fun. So I think Magic, generally I would try taking stabs whenever a new set comes out. If it takes too many sets in a row, you just bounce. Well, maybe then you're not enjoying the game and maybe you should do something else. Also, it's totally fine to watch Magic videos or listen to Magic podcasts when you're not playing Magic. I do that for games I don't play pretty frequently. It's fun to watch games, even the ones that I don't specifically play myself.
Yeah, a lot of people listen to the podcast and they say, I don't really play that much anymore, but I like to keep up on it or hear what you guys are up to or whatever. And there's plenty of ways to
we're just hanging out and you know talking about things that are interesting. I don't know, that's a fun thing to do.
Totally, yeah. So don't force it.
Magic's a veneer. Magic's part of that, of course. But there's not very many people who listen to the podcast who's never played Magic. But it doesn't surprise me that there's a ton of people who don't play Magic anymore and still listen, much like I would watch Among Us videos when I wasn't even playing. Because it's like I just enjoyed watching them, you know?
Right.
It's like you have fun watching football when you don't play football.
Right. Yeah, I haven't played football in a while. Yeah. Yeah. So don't force it. You know, I think that's the main thing is like, it's okay to just disengage a little bit and then come back into it. And, you know, there's nothing saying that this is the thing that you have to do, you know, with your time and energy. It's the thing that you want to do as long as it's the thing that you want to do. And if it's not, you know, that's okay too. All right. We should call it there. Thank you everybody who sent us in questions. We got to almost all of them, but if we didn't get to yours, we just were running out of time. But save them and you can post them again the next time we do a Q&A episode, and we'll get to as many as we can then again as well. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to find us on social media, Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. Pretty much everywhere you can find us, everything related to the podcast over at lrcast.com. If you want to watch some of those draft videos that we were mentioning at the beginning that got Adam hooked on Vintage Cube, again, you can check out Luis's YouTube channel, Daily Draft Videos over there, where you can dream. You can watch Luis draft things that you probably wouldn't be able to draft it the same way. This is the experience that Adam was describing to me last night. But still, it's super entertaining to watch Luis work his way through a draft like nobody else can. And there's a link to that at the front page of lrcast.com as well. We want to thank everybody who supports us on Patreon, as well as Ultimate Guard for their support of the show. That is going to do it for this episode. We'll see you next week.
Marshall, is there anything more divisive than a top 50 cube list? Because I recently put out my current top 50, and it's just so funny every time you do that. Seeing the comments there, there's a thread on the cube subreddit.
Where did you put it out?
As a YouTube video.
I'll watch that. I love your top 50 ones. It helps me understand where the cube's at because I haven't played Vintage Cube in a little while. So.
Well, this was I actually do need to do one for the Magic Online Cube as well. This was for the powered cube that I use, so it has Time Vault, Demonic Consultation, and that
is this the LSV cube or
okay. Power LSV is what I'm calling it. The LSV cube is still without initiative. This has initiative in it as well.
I see,
but I just find it really funny because it's like. The amount first of all, there's 2 green cards in the top 50 under my estimation, and neither of them are mono green. Can you guess the 2? I think you might be able to.
Fast Bond?
Neither of them is mono green. Fast Bond's also not in the top 300
mono green
anymore.
Is what's it called? The hamster planeswalker still in there? Minsk and Boo. Let's see. Is there something blue-green?
I'll give you a hint that I currently don't have Oko in the top 50, though it's pretty close to it. I would say it's an honorable mention.
That is what I was thinking.
The last green card is not one that is cast often and is barely green.
What is it?
Atroxa.
Oh, yeah.
So, as a stand-in for all the reanimator cards.
Wow, so green is just out.
Well, I had an interesting comment of like, wow, look at this, look at, there's no green in the top 50. How do we fix this? And the answer is like, you really don't. Like, how would you propose making green better in Vintage Cube? It's the worst color by far. Well, you have one real option. You can make all the other colors worse if you want.
Right. That's
you can't make green better. We're already trying to do that. We have every good green card in. Does it make sense to make the other colors worse to make green better? I would argue no. That doesn't really make sense. Like, that's not really the Vintage Cube experience. Does it matter that green is worse than all the other colors? Like, sure, it'd be better if it was balanced. You can still draft green, and sometimes it's right too. But this just goes back to Magic players, and a lot of people just have the, I think, mistaken impression that the most balance equals the most fun, and that is just clearly not the case. That's not how it works. And I think making green better in Vintage Cube, I mean, if you take initiative out, that's one thing, but green also is really good at playing the initiative cards because it can play them faster and has like Undermountain Adventure and stuff like that. So I don't even know that makes green better. Taking combo stuff out of the cube certainly makes green better, but I think some amount of combo is fine. You could definitely dial it down, but can you make it so, like right now, the top 50 list has a lot of blue and black cards, and then a good amount of white, red cards and artifacts, and very few green cards. Can you make it so it's 10 green cards in the top 50? No, I don't. There's just, if you look at the history of Magic, the 10 best green cards are just way worse than the 10 best cards of basically all the other colors.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. There are some formats where green's really good. cube just isn't one of them. And I don't think trying to force it to do that is really that productive. I mean, you could try to, but I don't think most people would. I think even the people who claim they want that would not find that cube to be more fun. So it just all is an interesting perspective to look at. And well, everyone loves top 50 lists. It's really fun to debate them. So you can check out mine. I think it's a good one. Other lists I posted, maybe a little less good. I've seen some pretty wild ones, but it's people post what they do. Plus, the other thing is my top 50 list is what I think the power level is, not how I draft. Because if it was how I draft, let's just say Lion's Eye Diamond and Mox Opal would go a little higher in the pick orders than what I'm representing here. But I'm trying to give people the best representation I can. So top 50s, always a good time.